Hey, before we get started, a little warning. The book this episode's about revolves pretty heavily on what at first appears to be a date rape scenario. It's quickly resolved that this isn't the case, but I understand this is a sensitive topic, so if you'd like to skip this week, I will not be offended, and you can come back next week when we're talking about something perhaps a little less scary. Thanks. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible, purveyors of fine audio entertainment, where you can get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook at audibletrial.com/I-don't-even-own-a-television. Yes, sir! 1, 2, 3. There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television. Hello and welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about bad books. I am your host, Jay Williams Friedman, and with me today is a recovering child actor, storyteller, and online person of note, Mara Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Thanks for coming out. And definitely thank you for recommending this awesome book that we'll be talking about today, entitled Covert Conception. This is a return to our roots. Longtime listeners will remember that the first episode was Pregnesia, an excellent Harlequin suspense novel. And this is another book in that series, which incidentally also has to do with being pregnant.
Well, it's not actually in that series, but it is along that theme. There seems to be a whole bunch of them that are just about pregnant women in danger and pregnant women being saved.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, it definitely is. I don't know if there's an actual series. Like, I went online to look it up on the Harlequin site, and it just said, it was like, there were a lot of books with titles like Lock, Stock, and Secret Baby. Hook, Line, and Shotgun Bride, or Pregnancy and Passion, and things like that. But there didn't seem to be like one line that was specifically dedicated to pregnancy books. It just seemed like a lot of women write about it, which is even more interesting, I think.
And this woman in particular has written many books about the topic.
Yeah. I have the book here. She has some of the list of the books that she's written. She's written one called Confiscated Conception. Mommy Undercover.
Which sounds like an awesome movie.
Yeah. Peekaboo Baby. Secret Surrogate. Unexpected Father. The Cradle Files.
The Cradle Files.
The Cradle Files. Exactly. There's one just called His Child. Yeah.
That's probably not as action-packed and suspenseful as this book is.
No, probably not. There's a lot of them. There's one in the back here that's called Merry Christmas Babies. And it's about a woman. Elise Richardson hears her biological clock ticking loudly, and with no husband on the horizon, she's decided to have a baby on her own. But she begins to depend more and more on her business partner, Joe Bennett, who's also her best friend, especially when she finds out she isn't having one baby this Christmas, but 4.
Merry Christmas, babies!
Exactly.
So basically this book, for about the first 10 pages of it, I was convinced that we would never be able to do an episode about this, because when the book first opens, it appears that our protagonist has been drugged.
Yeah.
And is now pregnant as a result of an encounter that happened during that time period. However...
It's horrifying at first. And it's... At the beginning, it says, like her sister says, "You're pregnant, Natalie." And she's like, Natalie was hoping this was a joke. And I'm like, what the fuck kind of joke would that be?
That's a really horrible joke.
Yeah, that So at first it seems a little horrifying, but...
Yeah, so the next thing you learn is that it turns out the man was drugged too, and they're all part of some horrible conspiracy.
Yes, there's a group called the Cyrene Project.
Yes,
that wants to create the perfect human because they're like, what's his name who does Fifth Element or something? It's like that. There's this they want to create the perfect humans, and it talks about how Natalie is supposedly, like, really, really beautiful, but not like the socialite's beautiful. She has some flaws, like freckles.
Yeah,
and
like freckles.
and things like that. And Rick is this other guy that she kind of grew up with, and completely disregarding the Westermark effect, they'd always been attracted to each other. And so this organization drugged them both at a party, put them in a room together, and just, I guess, counted on the fact that they would have sex.
Yeah, it's kind of zoo-like in a way.
It is very zoo-like. It is, or like The Sims or something.
The Sims, yes, exactly.
It is a little bit like that. It's like they did it, and it talks about like how brilliant Natalie was, and how athletic she was, and how intelligent she was, and never actually shows you any of these wonderful characteristics in either of these people.
No, except that Rick is a bad boy.
Rick is a bad boy. That's one thing that it keeps coming back to, is Rick is such a bad boy. She's like, and she always calls him that. She's like, you and your bad boy routine, I always thought about you and your bad boy reputation.
Bad boy reputation comes up a lot.
Yeah, bad boy reputation, which he doesn't at all. He works on motorcycles, so that means bad. I don't understand.
Well, he also can, quote unquote, kick some serious butt.
Yes, he can. He can kick some butt.
He punches a guy once and then refers to it as like mutilating someone or something. It's pretty awesome.
Rick is really dumb. It's really funny, actually, how dumb he is.
I don't know if this is because of television or not, but I couldn't not picture him with like a mullet and a bad like Hulk Hogan mustache.
Yeah, I was imagining him as this like CW bad boy.
Yeah, totally.
I remember watching like Buffy or something with my brother once, and I was like, why do all these guys look the same? My brother goes, oh, they get them from a special store in Canada.
Yeah, totally.
They really do. Like the Canadian hunk, he's got broad shoulders, he's got light hair and light eyes, but like, he looks really serious sometimes,
Yeah, and he runs a custom motorcycle shop.
He does, so he's bad. But the plot thickens because Natalie and Rick hate each other.
Yes.
They hate each other for the most convoluted reason ever.
Ooh, can I do this?
Yes, do it.
Okay, yeah. So they hate each other because Natalie was engaged to a guy who was her friend that she wasn't going to marry. But then he decided that he really did want to marry her, but she didn't. And then when he saw her and Rick kissing, he tried to kill himself.
Yeah, this guy had issues.
Yeah.
This guy had issues.
And then on his deathbed, he made the two of them promise that they'd never get together.
It was just like, and that's so like manipulative.
Yeah.
That's so, I was like, this guy is the worst.
And throughout the whole thing, they're like, we have to keep our promise to David. It's like, David's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, David was a horrible human being. David had these serious problems before you got involved, And I also love how like Natalie's like, okay, fine, we'll get engaged, but we're not getting married.
Yeah, she's like, I just need to tell my mom I was engaged.
Yeah.
It's like, you could probably fake that one.
Yeah, I was just like, there's just miscommunication all around here, guys. You just need to talk about this.
Also,
it should talk this out.
It should be mentioned that the mom's name is Macy, because throughout the thing they kept talking about how people were going to Macy's.
Yes.
And I found that really entertaining.
There's also a private investigator named Mason Tanner.
Yes.
Which is like two like wealthy like Upper East Side boys' names, put together. Like I bet Dolores Fawson, who wrote this, I bet she has two sons named Mason and Tanner. And they were like, put us in your books, Mom. She was like, okay.
Connor Dakota.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is an amazing piece of fiction, obviously.
It is.
I think one of my favorite parts is definitely the writing style. I took copious notes about it, and I'm sure we'll discuss some of this in depth later.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the main impression I got is that it kind of feels like it was written by a 7th grade English teacher, that it kind of overdosed on primers.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. It's really funny, some of the things that they do, like there's a line in here at one point, like I think in the sex scene where it says like their bodies came together, blah 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 blah, her breasts against his chest, touching everywhere. I'm like, oh, prehensile breasts.
Touching everywhere.
Or like and there's actually a line in the sex scene, the air between them changed. Or something.
something.
And there's also another line. She keeps talking about fires. She's like, it was a fire, a blazing fire, a blazing inferno. And that's kind of what fires do.
Yeah.
But this is also a really another wonderful confusing line. Let's see. He didn't kiss her, but his breath did. It moved against her skin as his fingers worked their magic, but those fingers became even more magical when he eased his hand between them to cup her breast.
Wait,
I know. I'm not very good with visual. Like, I've never had a very good at visual imagination. Like, my mind is like, it's like a community theater with limited backdrops. Like, every time I read a book, it takes place at, like, in, like, the house I grew up in, or, like, the apartment that I used to have, you know? But, so this one, it took me a while, you know? He eased his hand between them to cup her breast.
Yeah, I thought she was talking about his fingers still, and I was imagining, like, here is the church, here is the steeple.
Exactly. There's a lot of things, you know, that are just kind of hard to imagine. There's a lot of just little slip-ups with language, and there's also a lot of, like, darns
and oh mercy.
Mercy's a lot. Hell's bells comes up. Hell's bells, Natalie.
Yeah, but that's Rick says hell because he's a bad boy.
Rick does say hell because he's a bad boy.
Natalie only says mercy.
Oh, Natalie says at one point, "I'm sorry, I'm being so witchy."
Witchy, yeah.
Witchy.
And at the end, they refer to. Ooh, wait, we got to hold on here.
Oh yeah.
But let's just say
spoilers.
there's several witchy women in this book.
Oh yeah. There's several witchy women. It's really just, and there's one point where he says, like, you want me to talk dirty to you. Mind you, there are very few sex scenes in this book. And
they're tame.
And they're really tame. And I looked it up later, and Harlequin Intrigue requires them to actually be, like, pretty gentle. Like,
gotcha.
they say, like, you have to be gentle with these. There are other ones that allow you to actually go more in depth. But, this is you know, confession time. When I was in high school, I went to a boarding school for the visual and performing arts for 2 years. And when I was there really wasn't a lot to do besides I go into town on the weekends. And we would go into the bookstores and we would play, like, romance novel bingo. And, you know, I would like pull out the book and find the sex scenes, fold down the corners, and put them back on the shelf.
That's awesome.
I was doing them a favor, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But there was, and also, like, the chick lit section, which was like, you know, the kind of, like, Devil Wears Prada type of stuff that was really big at that time too. You know, and my friends and I would, like, read it ironically, but also you have to keep in mind that, like, we were girls and at the time, like, I thought in my head, like, good girls didn't look at porn.
Yeah.
You know, so we would, like, read like, you know, Cosmopolitan's Red Hot Reads, or some really, like, terrible shit like that, and, like, store up these, you know, and some of the sex scenes got pretty explicit. So I became really good at finding the sex scenes in romance novels really quickly.
You can recognize the cadence.
Oh yeah. And you know, we'd play bingo with them, you know, the heaving bosoms, the sex, the manhood, the womanhood, the warm wetness, her heat, you know, things like that. And I became really good at finding it. There was usually one, like, in the beginning, then there would be one at the end. A lot of times, like, the characters hate each other, and then they have sex, and then because the sex is good, they no longer hate each other.
That happens here.
So when I found this book, my friend Sean Ireland, he gave it to my friend Jenny Jaffe. They're probably see me retweet them on Twitter a lot. Anyone listening to this, he gave it to her as, like, a joke present. And I picked it up, and I was like, ooh, let's see the terrible sex scenes. And I flipped through it, and I was like, there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing in this. And I was like, this is some bullshit. Like, and it wasn't until I actually sat down and read it that I realized that there is a sex scene, but it's just kind of like, and then they went to bed.
Yeah.
The next morning,
yeah, totally.
They fade to black.
It happens off camera, you might say.
Yeah, it's like a PG movie in 1989, you know?
But intensely more awkward because there are attempts at, you know, I mean, obviously it's a pretty adult theme, and there are a lot of attempts at kind of venturing into adult language, but it's written in this bizarre way. Like, I have a section here when Rick first finds out that she's pregnant, and he doesn't remember the night either because he was drugged as well.
Yeah.
He says, "What are the odds?" Rick asked. He didn't wait for her to ask what he meant. That we'd be having drug sex at the very time you'd be ovulating. That's how men really talk in real life, so...
It's just so, it's really, you know, the one thing that really amazed me about this book is that they went about getting these two characters pregnant and making them a subject of a you know, an experiment in the most, like, roundabout way. You know, they could have, like, I think, like, their doctor is involved or something, and they're like, they could have easily just, like, knocked them out at the doctor's, extracted some, like, sperm and eggs, and then made this thing, you know, like, test tubed it.
Yeah, no, but instead
they drugged it, and, like, they drugged them both, and it's my understanding that, like, you know, most like like date rape drugs leave you basically incapacitated.
Well, that actually leads me to something that I really liked here was when they're actually describing it, the drug itself. Let me find this here. Yeah, here it is. She sees this incident on one of the security cameras that she has set up all through her house.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. If there are security cameras here, like
in her bedroom and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really roundabout way. You know, that the Siren Project is going about this in a really roundabout way, especially in a place where this woman has servants and video cameras everywhere.
So anyway, her sister Kit, not to be confused with Night Industries 2000, tells her that she saw something scary on the video. And she shows her the video.
Kid exposition.
Yeah. Good old sister exposition. Explains to her, I saw you and Rick going in your bedroom and you guys hate each other, so this is horrible. And, she plays her the footage of them stumbling around. And the next sentence says, from the looks of that video, it had been a date rape drug. Or maybe some weird, powerful aphrodisiac that induced memory loss. And I may be mistaken here, but I kind of thought those were the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I've heard about, date rape drugs and things is basically they just incapacitate someone enough so that, and this is going to get disturbing, somebody else can take advantage of them. It's not something, if you were to give two people date rape drugs, they would not be able to move. They would both just be lying there. It would be fucking zombies. It's scary. And unless like the Siren Project came in and like placed him on top of her, I don't think he would probably, and this is my understanding. I could be mistaken, but
this is one thing that no one will write in to correct you about.
Exactly. This is not something I really want to know the answer to, but yeah, it's just like, but you could have easily, extracted some sperm, extracted some eggs, and it's also interesting to me that they were always in love with each other. They grew up together. And the thing is, though, there's that, like, the Westermark fact that if you're with somebody, at a really young age, you know them from really young age, you don't see them in a sexual way.
Yeah, I mean, their whole relationship is really strange because it turns on a dime so quickly.
It does.
Like, at the beginning of the book, they completely hate each other. But then as soon as she finds out that he wasn't actually involved with anything sinister, it's like all of a sudden it's totally cool for them to like start lusting heavily after one another.
Well, that's a common thing in romance novels, I think, is the strong feelings. It's just some kind of strong feeling, and then that strong feeling is sort of turned into love or into sex, and the sex keeps them together, which is how a lot of romance novels go. Yeah, it's chemistry. It doesn't matter if you like them or you don't like them. It's chemistry.
As long as you have a strong reaction. So.
Exactly, because then you can carry that on into sex, and the sex will carry on into love.
Yep, and also you should totally have a baby with someone you hate because it'll bring you closer together.
Well, that's another thing too. Like there's this part at the beginning where he suggests abortion, I guess.
Yeah. It's never actually made clear, but they do say a couple times she was going to keep this baby.
Yeah, exactly, and
there is a phrase in it, and I'm coming off the top here. I didn't highlight it, but I believe she says she was going to love this baby no matter how it was conceived.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that in there, and he even asks her, like Rick asks her at one point, are you going to keep this? And she's like, yes, of course. It's like, well, abortion is legal, in all these,
course.
Exactly, but she's still just, she never even considers that. She never even considers giving it up for adoption. It's just like, nope, foregone conclusion.
Well, I feel like too, a lot of that is kind of maybe a glimpse into the mind of the author.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because Natalie says something like, it's just my values, it's just how I am, Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you're. There's a lot of telling, not showing in this book. She's like, nope, these are my values, but she never touches on those values. She never says, this is what I believe. This is why, this would never happen.
It's all very reflexive. It always comes up in, someone will say something and then she'll be like, oh, that's when I knew he was smart or something.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of, and a lot of her being said to be really intelligent, and a lot of, the bad boy thing. The bad boy thing is something that is a very, very common trope in
I don't know if I've ever read it hyphenated before, though.
Yeah, that's true. Bad boy. The hyphen, I don't know, that makes me think of like early 90s boy bands, like New Kids on the Block
totally.
or something.
Like Bad Boy Reputation.
Exactly.
Performing with NSYNC.
It's a package deal, you know.
Color Me Bad with special guest Bad Boy Reputation.
And that is a very common trope in romance novels and a lot of women's literature. And I think that that's something that appeals to someone. And this is something I've actually thought about a lot, is why that bad boy image, is said to appeal. And I think that it's definitely a power thing. And this is funny because a few weeks ago I had somebody on my public Facebook page. My public Facebook page is like exactly like that Simpsons episode where Lisa says, "Why did they come to our concert just to boo us?"
Oh yeah.
That is exactly what my public Facebook page is. People just come on there and they like my page and then they tell me I'm shit. And I'm like, "Okay, guys,
welcome to the internet."
Yeah, exactly. But it's just weird that they actually go out of their way. And it's not like just on Twitter where they'll say it to me. Like, these people stick around to tell me that I'm shit. So I went there and somebody had posted on there like, why do you, shouldn't you blame sluts for, this is a woman, but, saying like, well, you say that we shouldn't shame sluts, but maybe some just really need to be shamed,
Woo.
And I was like, okay, but the thing about being a slut is somebody who has had sex one more time or with one more person than you.
Yeah.
That's always what it is, and I know that because I was, a puritanical 13-year-old, and I've been in all those situations now where you think about that. Like, I'm sure I'm a slut by my 13-year-old standards, and everybody's a slut by my 13-year-old self standards, and Mother Teresa's a slut next, by her standards, but well, maybe not Mother Teresa. Anyway, but this woman, I noticed, like, her cover photo on her Facebook was this. There was like a woman and like a picture of like the Hulk or something, and it said, and then you saw like a woman go up to him, like a little cartoon, and like hug him, and then him coming back into a person. It said, like, sometimes it takes the right woman to soothe the man inside the beast.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and I was just like, this is exactly. I was like, okay, A, this show tells a lot about what this person who's posting on my wall about sluts is about. B, this is exactly the problem. This is the biggest problem, is this idea that a man is a monster and only you can save him, only you can change him. This is in Twilight.
Yeah, totally.
This is in Twilight, this is in 50 Shades of Grey, which honestly, like, this book, as terrible as it is, it's no more poorly written than 50 Shades of Grey.
I have still managed to keep that book out of my head for this long, and I probably will continue to do so.
It's the fucking worst. I mean, I've just read recaps, but it's awful. But it's this idea that, and it's a power thing, I think, because it's this man who is so troubled and so removed and such a bad boy and so dangerous. You come into his life, you say, I'm going to change you, I'm going to help you, and you do. And that way you become his own level, and he shows interest to you. This is why, there's this women, and I know, like in my teenage years when I like went after guys who were kind of assholes, and they were never like really dangerous bad boy assholes. They were more like more like
a Rick, perhaps.
Not even Ricks. They were like I dated like the school Republicans, guy.
Oh, so they were just jerks.
Yeah, he was just kind of an asshole, He was this Alex P. Keaton, like, Radiohead loving, sandal wearing Republican. Ooh. And I remember just really, really wanting him to go after me because he was really cocky and really sure of himself. And I thought that meant that he was really confident and really smart. And if he was really confident, really smart, and he went after me, that must mean that I could be really confident and smart as well.
See.
That I was enough on his level. It was getting him to notice me. So it was very much this sort of power dynamic thing. Like, I'm going to be part of a power couple with this. I'm going to be as powerful, as cool, as self-assured as this person. So I think that's really where the bad boy thing comes from, is this, like, I have tamed him. I have cured him.
Now, that makes sense, too, because throughout this book, like, Natalie is presented as an incredibly passive character.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the one way that, what's her name? Dolores Fawson, the author of this book?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the one way that she knows to illustrate that this character is, quote unquote, a strong female character, is that she can harness this bad boy and keep him in line.
Well, there are a lot of lines I've noticed, and this, I think we, as we go on, we should get more into the pregnancy thing, and why this is something. But there's a lot of talk about how there's a lot of times in here that Rick says you need to rest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you need to be safe. You need to protect my child, our child. You need to be careful. And he is always telling her, you need to rest. You need to take care of yourself. He is taking care of her. There is this sort of paternal aspect there. I mean, paternally, taking care of his baby, but also taking care of her. You need to be careful. You need to do this. And so she is presented as this very strong woman, but sometimes, and there is this like saying of, is there women have a lot of responsibilities these days. Sometimes do they want somebody to say to somebody else in their lives to be like, hey, take a break, relax. Do they need this like kind of person in their life to do it? Sometimes it's hard. I don't know, kind of like the idea of like how a lot of like CEOs will end up going to dominatrixes.
Yeah.
Totally. Women these days have, ostensibly, Natalie is this high-powered person, and maybe all she really wants is a guy to just tell her, no, you need to do this, you need to do that. She's
high-powered, though, in a way that is never really described.
No,
she has a huge house, but she deals antiques.
Antiques, yeah. And her mother's really rich, and she's, she's old money, but she's... she went to the Ivy League, apparently. Never says which, but just,
just the Ivy League.
Just the Ivy League.
Like 3 or 4 times without ever elaborating.
On an athletic, and they're the phrase, on an athletic scholarship, nonetheless.
Yeah, that's true.
But she never actually, like, kicks ass or plays any sports,
It's not even mentioned what sport it was.
Yeah, not mentioned which sport either. It's just, or what she studied or what she did. It's just, no, not at all.
There's a couple descriptions of her having an athletic body, too, I believe.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, but
there's
that's just kind of it.
There's a lot of that. It's very much telling, not showing. Just Dolores Fawson is going, just take my word for it.
Yeah.
Just take my word for it.
One of my favorite parts in the book is towards the beginning when she goes to confront Rick at his work, and she pulls up in her car and gets out, and like, it's this real kind of like... movie moment where you'd imagine some kind of wah-wah guitar, and she gets out of the car and like
American woman.
Yeah, exactly. It talks about like one spike heel came down on the ground, and then like he could see her hands reaching around, and he's like, the first thing he noticed about her was her fingernails that were manicured and raspberry colored.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but I don't ever think that's been the first thing I've noticed about anybody, male or female.
It's just, it's funny because she walks down to see him, and it goes on for like 5 pages. And there's one quote that says, Natalie was attractive. Not drop-dead gorgeous either. Her face was much more interesting than the surgically perfect socialites who were part of her world. It was an honest face, a face with character, a few tan freckles on her nose, a dimple in her chin.
A face, dear readers, like yours.
Exactly.
This is relatable.
Exactly. It's very much, she wasn't beautiful, but... she looked like you, and there's always this sort of undercurrent in romance novels of like, not like all the other girls.
Yeah, there is. I can kind of see that, because that was definitely a big hinging factor in Pregnesia as well.
Yeah.
They use the phrase "not traditionally beautiful" a couple times.
Exactly. Just, not conventionally beautiful, because that way you can feel like you are part of this. And also, and I'm wondering actually if it is intentional, the way that they don't actually describe what she looked like or what she, thought like. But I think I might be giving them a little too much credit.
Yeah. I mean, all you really know about most of the characters in this book are like what color their hair is, how old they are, and where they went to college.
One thing, or that they went to college.
Yeah, that's true.
Rick's skin is described as bronzy.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It was a
bronzy?
gift. It was a gift from his Greek father. Here you go, son. Enjoy your bronzy skin. Bronzy, though, reminds me of... I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. Actually, we should probably go to a break here. We've been going ridiculously long.
Probably.
This is going to be a long one, folks. Strap in. Okay, yeah, so we're going to go to break.
9 months, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. We're going to go to break and enjoy the pregnant silence. Oh!
Oh! Gonna worry. I'm in a bed, boy. No, you say sorry. It's something that I enjoy.
All right, we're back again. Tell a friend. I don't even own a podcast. I'm your host, Jay Friedman, and with me again is Mara Wilson.
Hello.
Thank you for being here once again.
Thank you for having me again.
And for suggesting this wonderful piece of literature. Covert Conception by Dolores
Fawson. It's.
I keep wanting to say Fosse for some reason.
There's actually, it's funny because in the beginning it talks. There's about the author here, and it talks about imagine a family tree that includes Texas cowboys, Choctaw and Cherokee Indians, a Louisiana pirate, and a Scottish rebel who battled side by side with William Wallace.
At this point, I'm having a hard time imagining a white person in America that doesn't have Choctaw Indian in their family tree if you ask them.
Yeah, so. I'm one of the few people I know who isn't part Native American, It's like saying something is a Native American burial ground. Like, most of America is a Native American burial ground, sorry to say. Yeah. But she says that she, along the way to fulfilling her DNA destiny, Dolores, to write romance novels, Dolores married an Air Force Top Gun who just happens to be of Viking descent. That means he's from Minnesota.
Yeah. DNA destiny is pretty great.
Oh, too. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was destined from birth that I was going to write shitty novels for Harlequin.
It also says here it says in the thank you in the dedications it says to Ricky, I can never thank you enough. I wrote thanks a lot, Ricky.
Whoa, so Ricky is probably her husband then.
Yeah, I
man,
wonder.
This shit is pretty close to the surface.
Ricky, you know.
Well, those are obviously two different people.
Well, yeah, totally. Ricky is spelled with an EY, so that's different.
So earlier you mentioned a line in the book where it says the air beneath them or between them changed or something. And that kind of reminded me of how much of this book is incredibly awkwardly worded, which has been leading me to wonder if Harlequin has an editor, and if they do, if this is actually the preferred style, because a lot of this reads in a very, very kind of convoluted way. I'm a big fan of clarity in language as opposed to like blackboard grammar, and this book is heavy on it. Like, Rick and she did this.
There is.
I mean, I know that that's correct English, but when you're putting it in the mouth of a guy who runs a motorcycle shop and things like that, it's a little hard to believe that he would be like, really working the blackboard grammar so hard, and it does tend to make all the characters speak in the same voice too. Yeah,
they do all sort of talk like that, and it's funny because every now and then when it's ostensibly from Rick's point of view, it will be kind of more casual. It'll be like, hell's bells, he thought, or like, the air between them changed or something. That's all very, very much sort of from Rick's point of view.
I see. Yeah. So maybe Rick is just he's a little looser with his language.
Yeah, he is, Rick got an A- in 10th grade English.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way that it goes.
That's how you know he's a bad boy.
Yeah, that's how you know he's a bad boy, exactly. No Ivy League education for him. That is a literal line from the book.
For a book that has to do pretty primarily with sex too, the descriptions not actually of the sex itself but of what's going through Rick's mind in a lot of places kind of come off like a junior high locker room in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it does. But the thing about the sex scenes that's interesting is that I've noticed is that at least in the first sex scene he doesn't get off at all.
No, of course not.
He doesn't get off because he's
selfless.
Yeah, exactly. He is a gentleman, and so there isn't this, this isn't this idea, and there isn't that. There's also, she was suddenly, the world was a fireball, blazing, a lot of blazing.
There is a lot of blazing.
There's this scene, he says, have a few minutes of fun. How about I talk dirty to you? And he tested out a few hot suggestions that made her hotter.
Yeah, and they're never mentioned.
mentioned.
Once again, this is mise en scene, so...
And there's an "oh mercy," she says after she has an orgasm.
God.
And then
that is a turnoff. I just like to say.
There's also this next part which is great, where she says, "Please don't tell me that was a pity orgasm because I'm pregnant with your baby."
Wow.
He pulled back far enough to give her a flat look. Trust me. God, this is so gross. I wasn't thinking about the pregnancy when I had my hand in your panties.
Oh, God. Okay, first of all, I'd like to say that anytime someone makes a male character say the word panties, I'm like,
no, panties.
No, come on.
Panties is the most disgusting word.
Especially hearing a man say it, like, oh, I'm not going to say it.
In high school,
my wife gets mad when I say it.
Yeah, exactly. I get mad when someone says. We used to play the panties game, which was like, people say they'll put like vagina and then in something because vagina is an awkward word. Panties, we used to say like. Put panties in like names of food or panties in names of books or something like, pina panties and panties in a blanket and things like that just because it's an uncomfortable word. So yeah, anytime I hear panties used seriously, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, that's tough.
High school.
I'd like to mention the way Rick's lustful thoughts are described, though,
Yes.
because this particular passage made me laugh out loud today when I was pretending to work and was actually reading a Harlequin romance novel. Dear Lord, what has gone wrong in my life? But it says, before Rick could stop them, a few erotic images went through his head. Images of Natalie and him naked, having sex.
Exactly. Rick is a very simple creature.
Yeah,
I mean, I actually did write at this one point. There's this part where they're like, what is it? The Macy, the mother, is saying like, you know, maybe the Cyrene Project has something to do with it. It was an experiment to produce genetically superior babies. Blah 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 blah. You two were destined for each other. Blah blah blah. She spells it all out, and Rick goes, so what are you saying? And then she explains it, and then Rick is like, so you're telling me this? He's like, yes, and he's like, no, I can't believe this. And she's like, no, it is. I just told you everything.
Yeah, like twice.
And it's still, you know, and Rick is like, but what does the Cyrene Project have to do with Natalie and me?
And this
is also right after they've said that, like, the two of them were supposedly, like, were super intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even think we mentioned this, but, the Cyrene Project. Rick and Natalie were actually phase 1.
Yeah.
And their parents weren't together because they loved each other, but because they were part of this project to create genetically superior babies.
Yeah, it was just like it was like this thing that they did in college, you know, like other people's parents were like joined the SDS in the 70s, you know, like these people's parents.
Look, I made some mistakes. I had a genetically superior baby.
These people's parents like joined a eugenics group. Yeah. And what's funny is like, because I think about like the people I know, like, or I don't know anybody who's into eugenics, so the people I've heard of who are into eugenics are kind of like the same people who are into Ayn Rand, who are they are convinced that they are superior, you know, or like people in Mensa, you know, and
well, nobody ever supports that unless they think they'd be one of the chosen few.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly, and it's just like no, most of you guys are just like, you know, they're just idiots like you and me, you know, and but you're like, no, you don't understand, we are superior. And that's kind of the feeling that I got from this. These people were like, well, I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I'm, you know. Yeah.
How did they also, I managed, in a book about eugenics, Hitler is only mentioned once. That's a good trick.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rick being simple, though, this is another...
Rick is such an idiot.
This is another one of my favorites. It's about 2 hours after he finds out that the baby is his, and that Natalie is pregnant, and it says, there were times, like now, when he wondered if he could ever come to terms with it. So times like the past 120 minutes.
Yeah, there's this like there's this thing here, you know, it's just things like he says that like you know, but then Rick started thinking about the baby in his calloused hands. Oh, that's again, it's the smoothing out of the monster. I mean, the pregnancy thing is very, you know, this is interesting to me because I do feel like women are often told when they are pregnant, you know, that there's this sort of, I know like Elvis after Priscilla Presley had children, like there's a story that like he was just afraid to touch her. He was afraid of becoming a literal motherfucker. You know?
Oh, wow, yeah.
There is that kind of Madonna whore complex thing going on. And so, you know, specifically people are writing books about women that are pregnant. You know, that there is this, like, you are actually valued. You are actually, you know, this thing. Because pregnancy is kind of horrifying in some ways. Like,
yeah.
I haven't actually, but it's interesting because pregnancy is also heavily fetishized.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, these books could go either way, I guess.
Yeah, they could. Well, the thing is that I know a woman who was pregnant, and she said she was never hit on more than when she was like 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, I did an episode a couple months ago with a friend of mine who is about to have a baby, and we talked about a pregnancy guide for men called "Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad."
And
man, so much of that was kind of caught up in like her boobs are gonna get big and stuff like that, and it was really uncomfortable.
It is this really sort of, you know, this horrifying, like, you know, there is a thing growing inside of you, you know, that it is kind of weird, and there's And so, you know, these women feel like they don't own their body anymore. They don't, you know, this is somebody else is taking residence there, and inevitably their bodies are going to change, you know, so you make them feel desired. You know, make them feel like, oh no, it's actually okay.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's actually going to be all right. Somebody out there will really like you. And I mean, there are a whole bunch of different series of Harlequins out there. There's Love Inspired, which is the Christian ones, specifically Christian ones.
I didn't even know those existed. That sounds like fertile ground, no pun intended.
Oh my God. And those usually aren't about pregnancy, but they have really strict guidelines. You can, no sex, focus on emotional intimacy, no drugs, alcohol, gambling, premarital sex, or profanity. Or at least none of these by Christian characters.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's kind of like a Bollywood movie.
Kind of, yeah. There's no cards even allowed. Nothing, no crazy risks. Yeah, and the books there are called things like there's one called Brides of Amish Country.
Oh, nice.
Things like that. There's really interesting ones. There's the ones that are like all supposed to be exotic, like they have to take place in other countries. There's one called Undone by the Sultan's Touch.
Oh, wow. That just sounds really problematic in many ways.
Published not in, say, like 1934, but in 2014.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah,
okay.
published now. Like, someone becoming a harem girl. This is still... Woo. Yeah, this is still considered okay. And there's a whole bunches of them, and some of them are allowed to have sex and some of them are allowed to not. And they'll say, this is what we expect. This is kind of what we're going for in all of these. My friend and I were actually thinking, neither of us are Christian, we were thinking, like, it would be a really interesting writing exercise to try to write one of these love-inspired ones, because there's so many things you can't have.
That's
and you
true.
Can't do, and it has to have, a Christian worldview as a part of it.
Man, that's so hard for me to imagine. I had no idea that existed.
Oh, yeah, and it's just... It's interesting because there's a sort of line of like, is this what women want, or is this what women are told they want?
That's a good question.
That's something that I've thought about a lot. There is this sort of idea that women, want somebody strong and confident, and that's always what this guy is in here. He's strong and he's confident, but he's also very protective and paternal. Like, I lost count of how many times Rick is like, you need to calm down, you need to focus on the baby, now you need to put your feet up,
Yeah, you need to blink.
I'm gonna rub your feet. So he is everything, he is this like strong, masculine man, but he is also very protective and very paternal, and he finds her incredibly sexy, and it's just interesting. Harlequin is very much about wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, what exactly it is, and is this something that women want, or is this something that women have been told they want, so they do want it, and the self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a whole big thing.
I would say that from this book, I'm judging that the target market for this book, at least, is pregnant and culturally tone deaf.
Yeah, probably a lot of young moms,
Yeah.
a lot of, there are a lot of people. I knew some people, like in my hometown, a lot of times people will get pregnant young, but their parents will be like, okay, great, whatever. It's not the stereotypical, 16 and pregnant, or even like 19 and pregnant scenario. It's like, oh, you're pregnant, okay, whatever, we'll help you raise the kid. You'll stay in Burbank, California for the rest of your life, and we'll, this is just what's going to happen. And so it's, never really moving beyond. And I think, if that works for people and that's what, makes them happy, by all means. But like, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I am being this like urban dwelling, judgy person,
Those flyover states.
Exactly. Well, some parts of California are, but but there is definitely this, and it's, understand where this comes. I can understand where this comes from.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, yeah.
I mean, it definitely is a niche that I'm sure, there's not a lot of stuff out there that isn't one of these books that kind of would satisfy that,
Well, yeah, exactly. And the thing, too, is the thing that's interesting about Pregnesia is the woman there is like 8 months pregnant. And here she's like 2 months pregnant. She's barely pregnant. Like
she's not showing yet.
Yeah, she's not showing yet. She could very easily miscarry. Like, it's not, they keep talking about, Rick is always like, it's my child. And I'm like, it's just, some, like, at this point, it's like some cells. Like, it doesn't even, it's not even like, it's not, it doesn't have a heartbeat. It doesn't have, it's just, like, there's still a good chance that Natalie could have miscarried. In the first, in the first 10 pages, okay, the end. We don't need to fight off the Siren Project now.
Oh, they're trying to kill them throughout the book, the Siren Project people. I don't... I feel like we've kind of run astray of condensing the plot. I forgot to do that little thing here. But
the Siren Project is trying to kill them.
Yeah, this plot is ridiculous anyway. So
he has an Uncle Carlton who.
God! Okay, Uncle Carlton.
Uncle Carlton.
How could you put that in a book as the name of a guy who's supposed to be like a tough white dude?
Yeah.
Like this woman has never seen Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah, I like highlighted it and I was like, as in the Carlton dance.
Yeah.
You know, it's just ridiculous. And he was fighting against the Siren Project. He was against it, but because he was against it, you know, he was evil. And it's funny because one thing I realized in this book is that like everybody who could be evil is evil.
Yeah.
That's what I understood. It's like he might be involved, she might be involved, they might be involved. They're all involved. They're all involved. And always in the exact same way that you would imagine them to be involved. There's no real changes, nothing. It's just like, nope, they're all involved. Okay, well, all right. There's no real, like, complications here. Like, at one point, like, her mom loses her memory, but her mom gets it back.
Immediately.
Immediately. And just, it's just, there's a lot of, also, there's a lot of misunderstanding of, you know, psychotropic drugs and...
Yes.
And a lot of misunderstanding of psychological conditions. It's kind of like, there's that idea of, like, there's still that trope that, you know, it was all a dream, or the multiple personalities thing.
Yeah, totally.
Which are just, you know, which have been completely discredited by modern science, but still continue to be included in these books. And that's kind of what I felt like with this. I was like, there are at least like 3 ideas that are scientifically discredited.
Yeah,
you know?
that kind of serve as the linchpin for the entire story.
Exactly. You know, like. It's like Chuck Palahniuk using multiple personality disorder. It's like really, you know, how long ago has this been debunked? And
like I think a couple years after Sybil was
exactly,
so like in the 70s.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel in this with this. It's just like this is really what you're relying on. And
the book in a lot of ways mimics the structure of a mystery to the point where it kind of gets you expecting things to happen that never do. They present 4 or 5 possible suspects for, you know, being the mastermind behind the Siren Project and trying to have them killed. And then by the end of the book, you discover they're all evil.
Exactly.
One of them was actually behind the assassination attempts and the drugging, but it doesn't come out of left field. There's no startling revelation or anything. They just run into her with a gun and she's like, "Oh yeah, I did that."
There's in the front of the book there's in the front of the book there's a cast of characters, but it explains. It'll be like Natalie Sinclair. Someone drugged her and her nemesis, Nick Rivari, so they'd have sex. Now, pregnant with Rick's child, someone wants them both dead, and Rick is her only hope. Can they overcome a bitter past and work together to save their child? Yes, they can.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. In Rick Rivari, he is more comfortable building custom motorcycles than he is in Natalie's high society world. But he'll do whatever it takes to keep Natalie and his baby safe, even if that means moving in with the very woman he's sworn to resist. The cast of characters, like, it talks about them all so much that I just wrote next to it, now you don't have to read the book.
Yeah, no, totally, because, I mean, this book, the plot is paper thin. It's supposedly mostly about the characters, but they're never developed.
It's sort of, well, the thing is, it's sort of about, a lot of romance novels, I think, are like a lot of romantic comedies, in which you know exactly what's going to happen, but you don't know exactly how.
Yeah, or like a ghost movie, you know? Like you know there's going to be, like, some twist at the end that reveals everything.
Yeah, exactly, but you don't know how it's going to get there. You're there because it's how it's going to get there. That's what's interesting to you. Whereas this, like, it was just kind of like I was like, am I actually enjoying reading this? Not really. It's kind of dull and boring. Like, the only thing that I liked about it was that it was funny.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in that boat with you.
But it wasn't intentionally funny at all. I mean, there were 1 or 2 lines that were, you know, supposed to be funny.
Yeah, and those were like the least humorous parts of the book.
Yeah, exactly. They were really dry, you know, really dry and kind of creepy. But it was just so, you know, bizarre. Like, will you keep the baby? Yes. Natalie answered so quickly that he probably believed she'd given it no thought. She had plenty of it. Call it my personal beliefs, whatever, but this child is mine. Ours, she corrected. I'll definitely keep it. Though that ours had not come easily. Yeah.
This is one of my favorites too. That didn't surprise her. Rick was the sort of take charge man who was rock solid in a crisis. He would indeed stay put and stand by her.
Yeah.
There's, like you were saying earlier, tell don't show, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of that, you know, and there's There's a lot of I have a lot of like favorite lines in here. The dizziness is probably part of the pregnancy, Rick assured her in the calmest voice he could muster. I remember hearing it takes a while for a woman's body to adjust to the hormone surges. Don't go all understanding on me. It only confused me at a time when I don't need any more confusion, and it'd hurt your bad boy image.
Bad boy image!
He smiled. He couldn't help it. Can we make a bad boy image riff? Bad boy image!
Bad boys! Or just play the theme from Cops.
Yeah, exactly. To heck with this image. I'm in this with you. And that's supposed to make me feel better? But Natalie waved him off. Sorry, I don't mean that as witchy as it sounded.
Witchy.
Witchy.
Yeah.
So
at the end, they talk about the lady who was behind it all that shoots them. One of the doctors, spoiler.
Yeah.
And they refer to her as that witch a couple times.
Yeah, they do, as that witch. There's really not a lot going on. It's funny because I was explaining this to my sister, who lives out here, and I was explaining to her the plot, and she's like, it would kind of be interesting for, this sort of like romance with romantic, this romantic entanglements, with genetic modification kind of thing. And I'm like, well, that's probably like, I've never seen Gattaca, but I imagine it's kind of like that.
Yeah, Gattaca's awesome. You should see it.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that probably already exists in several forms. This isn't, not in this like terrible romance novel form. Like the idea of people being genetically modified to, I guess that's like Never Let Me Go or something, like a lot there are books like that. She's like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. And I'm like, no, trust me, this one is not. This one squanders what it has.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, people who listen to this know I'm a bit of a movie dork, and to me, this reminds me of someone trying to jam a feature-length movie into a short story.
Yeah.
It's very, very short. There's a lot of very complicated ideas that don't really have time to be explained in any detail, and so it ends up kind of feeling like a series of, character archetypes stumbling through situations while the narrator explains them all in great detail to you.
And there's a lot of, I ended up just skipping whole pages that were just like, the car was following them. Was it following them? Yes, it was following them. The car was following them. The car rear-ended them. Did you think this has anything to do with the Siren Project? No. But then the car continued to follow them. Do you think this has anything to do with the Siren Project? Maybe it does. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of you're serious? Yes, I'm serious. You're really serious? Yes, I'm really serious.
The audience has asked a lot of questions in this book, too.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me find this one. This is one that I really liked. How would Carlton react to being dumped? Had he held it against Rick's parents? If so, he hadn't shown it. And I just like that, it's almost like a reading prompt, like you're supposed to stop and be like, how did Carlton react? I don't remember. I'm going to flip back a few pages.
Personal reflection time, How would you react if you were in Carlton's situation? But yeah, there's a thing. There are many, villains in this book. They could all be villains, and it turns out they all are villains. And it kind of reminded me of, there were a lot of ghost-written R.L. Stine Fear Street books.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I remember reading those, and those were all really terrible, and there was always some horrible twist at the end.
Nice.
And they all were named something. I remember actually reading an R.L. Stine book called The Knife.
Oh, I think I've read this too.
Yeah, and it was just like a woman that was volunteering in a hospital and working there, and then at the end it turned out that they were kidnapping children and selling them. And
oh wow!
And it was just there were a lot of really clunky devices in there, and R.L. Stine didn't write a goddamn one of them, But
no, of course not.
There were a lot of
he was Kincading it.
Yeah, there was just a lot of there was always hypnosis was one thing, recovered memories was another thing, multiple personalities was another thing, that using only 10% of your brain and then using 100% of your brain, that was another thing, and that's kind of what I feel like is going on with Harlequins too, is that they're kind of given out to these laymen, and they're given these things that you might have heard of when you were in 9th grade, oh, did you hear about this? It's
and then the spiders climbed out of her zit.
Yeah, exactly. Or your woman is and then Chris turned to her and said, did you know if your hand is bigger than your face, you have cancer?
And then Richard Gere wandered into the hospital can you get this gerbil out?
Exactly, yeah. It's all very infantile. And I don't know. I do feel bad because I don't want to judge anybody who's making money off what they do, and they're writing stories, and Dolores Fawson is probably having a lot of fun writing these things. But
That's
it's
good.
just
Someone's having fun with these books.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this isn't. There are some Harlequin books, like the better Harlequin books. I think you read with one hand.
Oh.
But this is just. I also have to say that on the back cover it says "One Unforgettable Night."
Yeah, they have several unforgettable nights.
But that's the thing. The whole point is that they forgot.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually.
The whole point is that they forgot.
Yeah, they can't remember it at the beginning of the book at all.
Exactly, they can't remember it. How is that unforgettable? All they did was forget.
Yeah, and also about right after that, he's like something about hell on earth, and like they didn't have to imagine hell on earth; they were already living it. It's like things, you guys are like suddenly in love with each other now, and stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Then there's the one of my favorite horrifying things at the end is marry me, he said. Her throat snapped shut and the blood rushed to her head. What? She'd expected more sex. Definitely more sex. She'd even hoped for a few dates so they could settle down more comfortably into shared parenthood. But marriage? I wrote, bad idea.
Yeah, seriously bad idea.
He goes, picture it. A Harley riding PhD, beauty and brains. Or for a boy, brawn and brains.
Yeah.
And modest, too.
Yeah.
But he says, there's this quote at the end here. Let's see. What kind of blah, 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 proposal? He toyed some more with her panties and let his breath brush right against the V-junction of her thighs.
Panties again.
You're trying to distract me, she challenged. Yes, he readily admitted. Because I want you to agree to marry me, and if necessary, I'll get you to say yes while in the throes of oral sex.
Yeah, I know that particular line. I was just like, oh, that put my teeth on edge.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's not. I just wrote, that's not okay.
Yeah, that's not okay at all.
That's not okay. That's manipulative and horrible. Yeah, it says, I love you. That's why I want to marry you. The baby, who he starts calling Little Harley.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Little Harley is just a bonus, a great bonus, but a bonus nonetheless. You're the prize, Natalie.
I think wanting to name a child Harley is probably the ultimate deal breaker for most women. So. Yeah,
it's just it's sort of like, I remember my friend and I watched some like romantic comedy where the guy was supposed to be a runaway bride. That's what it was. Speaking of Richard Gere, and there was and like he was supposed to be a writer, and he's a writer because he's named his dog Italics.
Oh wow, that's awful.
Not like he didn't name his dog like
Wordsworth or something.
Wordsworth, yeah, or like Twain or something. He named it Italics.
This is my dog Books.
This is my dog Word.
Yeah,
I love Word.
Yeah.
Gerund, here, Gerund.
On that note, we're getting close to a segment break here, but I did want to mention hyphen abuse.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in this book that could have easily just been, a sentence, but are instead presented as a string of hyphenated words. And by the end of the book, it's tiring. There's, this was a nip it in the bud situation, all hyphenated. Nip it in the bud situation and stuff like that. And, it gets really exhausting by the end.
Yeah.
Especially when it happens in the middle of what's supposed to be a steamy sex scene.
The sex scenes are always... It's funny because, Dolores Fawson gets in the way. She, cock blocks her own characters.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But that's because, she's a smart, modern woman with her own needs and desires, although that doesn't really ever seem to be addressed.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Where is it? Sleep-starved circles is all hyphenated. Oh, and here's my favorite line. That was as far as Rick could take things in the sexual making out department. Also hyphenated.
It's very much, it's like a, here's the no kissing rule, the
phrase hugging session is used a couple times, as well as make-out session, which is pretty awesome considering an adult wrote this book.
There's also, in terms of just anatomy, it says, let's see. Here we go. Rick made a counterstrike. He went, since she was going on another zipper finding mission, Rick made a counterstrike. He went after her zipper. Well, her panties anyway.
God damn it.
That keeps happening where she's like, da-da-da-da-da. Well, this anyway. Or, well, maybe not. She second guessed herself. Stop second guessing yourself, Dolores. Here's another one. Just so he could get control of her clever zipper lowering hands.
Yeah, I don't know.
She was wet and hot. Oh, and she was ready. That we usually
usually
if you have a vagina, that's what. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh God, he kissed her nipples through the lace. It was definitely an erogenous zone for her because she slid her fingers into his hair and pulled him closer. Like, that's...
No, really?
Yeah, exactly. No,
wow, dude, you are the fucking master of sex.
Exactly. It's just like, it feels good when someone's nipples are touched. Like, there's a lot of nerve endings there. It's just like... It's as if they said, like, it hurt when she was slapped or something like that.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah. Oh, mercy. Mercy, mercy, mercy.
Okay, so we're going hella long here, once again. I think it's probably time to take a break. We're going to come back and do some segments, and please stick around. Today's episode of I Don't Even Own a Television is brought to you by Audible, home to over 30,000 audiobooks, which is so many you could probably die of old age while listening to them. Do they have Harlequin Intrigue novels? I'm not sure, but they have a lot of other great stuff, like Galveston by Nick Pizzolatto, narrated by Robert Kramer. I'm listening to it now. It's incredible. You should check it out. So, if you'd like to check that out, or one of the many other titles you can also scope, why not go to audibletrial.com/I Don't Even Own a Television and sign up now for a 30-day free trial and a free audiobook download credit. You'll be helping me out, and you will get all sorts of great entertainment you don't even need to use your eyeballs to absorb. Thanks. All right, we're back. I Don't Even Own a Television. I am Jay Friedman. With me today is Mara Wilson.
Hello. Sorry, I was taking a drink of water.
Things are never predictable here at I Don't Even Own Television. So, speaking of which, too, normally this last segment we do quite a few little things. This time we're going to keep it kind of light because we've been running pretty heavy on the time here. There's so much to talk about in this book. And
I feel like we've kind of all blended into each other.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, there's it's hard to look at a book like this and come out with any kind of structure because it's
exactly it's hard to just discuss this in clear, concise terms.
Yeah, agreed. Because the book is anything but. For a 200 and something page book, this is one of the most convoluted things I've read in a long time.
It really is.
I don't know. But, okay, so the one concession to tradition I'll make here is, I think it's time for some dramatic reading. Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound recorded. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you. All right, so in dramatic readings, we are going to read sections from this book, and you will enjoy them. Because I said so, much like Rick. Our hero.
Our hero.
So I'm going to kick this off here with just a brief segment here that kind of describes, I think kind of encapsulates a lot of the description of the romance of the book. Mm-hmm. And kind of sums up its weird jumps between like lady romance and junior high school gym locker stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. She went down the hall towards the sound of Rick's voice so she could explain that, according to Kit, it was the best security system money could buy. But Rick came out of one of the guest rooms and ran right into her. Literally. Body against body. He was solid, all muscle and strength. He reached out, temporarily scooping her into his arms, probably to make sure she wasn't off balance. The embrace lasted mere seconds before he stepped away. Natalie immediately felt the loss of his arms, the warmth and strength of his body, and she hated that it felt like a loss. She shouldn't be thinking about Rick's arms, or any other part of him, especially the parts that involve kissing and sex. Also, she immediately felt the loss of his arms. At first, I was like, when did his arms fall off?
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Oh, actually, one more thing, too.
Yeah.
It says she had more than enough problems without having sex dreams about Rick Gervais. And I don't know if this happened to you, but my mind gets kind of weird with names when they're misspelled. And every time they mentioned him by a full name, I kept reading it as Ricky Gervais. And having sex dreams about Ricky Gervais is definitely a problem.
Yeah, so. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Let's see, well, here at the beginning, let's see. She'd oh God. It was hard to believe all of his mismatched features could add up to something extraordinary. But heaven help the female population, they did. The olive, bronzy skin, a DNA contribution from his Greek father, those sizzling gray eyes framed with indecently long lashes, the cheekbones of a Celtic warrior. She'd yet to meet a woman of any age or background who hadn't found Rick Gervais hot, including her, much to her disgust. That one kiss they shared 3 years ago, that one short lapse in judgment had caused someone to die. Not just someone, though. Someone they both loved. David, she said under her breath. A little over 3 years ago, David had asked her to marry him. She said yes, even though David knew she didn't love him. She also knew she was looking for a way. He also knew she was looking for a way out, a way to stop her mother's relentless matchmaking. That's why Natalie had agreed to be his fiancée, but not his wife. She told him up front there would be no marriage. David obviously thought he could change her mind. Natalie had thought an engagement ring would stop her from wanting Rick. It hadn't. One night, Rick and she had run into each other at a party. They talked, had too much to drink, had gotten way too close. One thing led to another, and they kissed. Just as David walked in on them. Obviously feeling betrayed by his two best friends, David had swallowed what turned out to be a lethal dose of sleeping pills. He died in the ER only a few hours later.
I like that they say that their kiss caused him to kill himself,
yeah.
and not mental illness.
Yeah, and not David's own problems. David trying to manipulate Natalie into a relationship and a marriage. You know. Also, she says like she wants to put an end to her mother's relentless matchmaking by hooking up with David. Why didn't she just hook up with Rick?
Yeah.
Oh, why didn't she just hook up with Rick in the first place?
Bad boy.
Because he's a bad boy, and David, who is mentally ill and messed up because
David is characterized, that's about the extent of it, what you just read there, but you're supposed to really kind of understand how these characters won't get together because the best friend killed himself. But I mean, he exists in this book as a specter of a guy that killed himself, and that's pretty much it. Like, you have no idea what kind of character he was or why these people really care about him so much.
Exactly.
And he just kind of comes across as like a Reddit friend zone believing kind of jerk,
This whole thing is sort of like, you're gonna have to take our word for it. Okay, this is my last thing. It's Rick looking at Natalie. She wore a deep purple gown and matching robe, silk. The outfit skimmed along her entire body, stopping just above her bare ankles and feet. Not provocative, exactly. Okay, it was provocative. He could see the outline of nipples and the sweet curves of her hips. Not a waif's body. A woman's body.
Yeah. I had that one highlighted too. That's another one like, hey ladies at home.
Exactly. And his male body reacted in a bad male sort of way.
And I'm sure that was hyphenated as well.
It's just, oh god, it's very simply like, this is what you want, right, women? Every woman wants a bad boy. Every woman wants this. It's like the there's a saying like, women want this when they're ovulating and this at another time, at this like sort of, in that sort of like Evo Psych kind of bullshit kind of way. Like, oh, you want a strong man here, you want a decent man here. So that's what they try to do in romance novels. They try to combine it. They try to make him like rugged and manly, but also very sensitive and protective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's only sensitive and protective with you, It's only with you. You hold the key. You are, the alchemist.
Yeah, and otherwise he's kicking serious butt all over the place.
Exactly. He punches Troy, and, Troy goes down.
No, Troy! We haven't talked about Troy, but we don't need to.
Troy, there's really, there is a plot in this book, I guess, but, I kind of lost it.
I've said this about a few books we've reviewed on here, but there's less of a plot than a premise.
Yeah,
it doesn't really go anywhere. It's like you can read the back of the book and from start to finish what the book is about.
But still, I'm surprised. But I'm still surprised, how much it meanders. There are a lot of pages where Rick is just like, are they chasing us? Do you think they're chasing us? Oh, they're definitely chasing us. We're definitely chasing them.
Threads are just picked up and dropped, like them being chased in a car, which happens exactly once.
Yeah.
And then later on it's brought up again, like it's this ongoing thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of a lot of the same. It's like the same notes, hit over and over and over again. It's almost strident after a while. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. All right, it is. It's like listening to bad music.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very short book. It probably could have been 100 pages shorter.
Yeah, it could have been. This happened, Natalie miscarried. The end.
So,
oh, God.
in service of this incredibly long podcast so far, it's probably time to wrap things up.
Yeah,
but before we go, I was curious if you would recommend this book earnestly, ironically, or both. Or neither.
I wouldn't recommend it earnestly. Ironically, it's funny. It is kind of funny, A lot, but there are a lot of other romance novels that are funnier. I've been honest. I read like some of the, people say 50 Shades of Grey is mommy porn, but I've read mommy porn before. There's one where like a couple, has sex and they wake up in the morning to their son listening to Who Lives in a Pineapple Under the Sea. Like that's
wow.
Yeah, I've read funnier. I've read funnier.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of agree with you. It's really short, so you can get through it really fast, and
it is kind of funny. I did laugh out loud at this book a couple times.
Yeah, me too. But I think honestly, if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard the funniest parts already.
Yeah, and the plot just like after a while, I stopped paying attention to the plot altogether because it just gave me a headache. I was like, God, I don't care.
My eyes really glazed over, and it's in a lot of ways, it's not worth paying attention to because it never pays off.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
It's kind of like a mystery book that at the end of it, the solution to the mystery is like, oh, surprise, there was no mystery at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It was exactly who you thought it would be at the beginning of the book.
There's no twist at all. I was hoping maybe there would be a twist, but no.
I thought her mom was going to be involved in some way.
I thought David was going to be involved in some way, that like David had orchestrated this in some way.
Man, that's a better book right there.
Exactly. One of these days I will write a romance novel.
Awesome.
Yeah, just it's something I could do. I feel like you can very easily do it. I don't know. Maybe this was a lot harder to write than it was to read, but
Yeah, I doubt it.
Oh dear.
But speaking of things that you do, before we take off, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Oh, well, let's see. This is probably going to go out after I do the Shipwreck show because that's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something. I have a show. If you are in New York, I have a show at Union Hall in Brooklyn. Usually the third Sunday of every month. Although August 24th, we are going to be at Joe's Pub in Manhattan. It's called What Are You Afraid Of? It's about fears, phobias, dealing with them, laughing at them, and. Yeah, and I write at MaraWilsonWritesStuff.com. MaraWilson.com was taken. I'm on Twitter at Mara Writes Stuff way too often. I'm on Facebook, Mara Wilson Writes Stuff. Again, all of the regular Mara Wilsons were taken, so I have to be like one of those people who is like, well, I'm a writer, and you know that because I say writes in my Twitter name, which I kind of hate myself for, but they were all already taken. So and you can find me there.
Cool, yeah, and definitely, reach out, follow Mara on Twitter.
I'm also on Welcome to Night Vale.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
that's
actually
true.
Which is how I know you.
Yeah. For the people at home who are listening to a podcast, you obviously know what that is already. So I'm not going to explain it, but exactly. Both of us have been involved to some degree. Mara much more than I.
Yeah.
That's how we met.
You've trended on Tumblr too, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. People on Tumblr really like to know that I was drunk when I recorded a song about a bus, apparently, judging from my retweets or my reblogs or whatever they call it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you'd like to get a hold of me, it's I don't even own a television at gmail.com or facebook.com/IDEOTVpod, which is crazy. So why don't you just go to the website, I don't even own a television.com, and there are links to Facebook and Twitter and all these other places where I have a weird abbreviated name.
Is it I don't even own a television, or is it even I don't even own a podcast.com?
I've gotten pretty good about not doing that anymore, and I feel like some of the charm has vanished now. But if I try to do it intentionally, it's pretty obvious. So I'm not a good actor. But get in touch. Constructive feedback, always welcome. Please write in. Actually, don't write in to correct us about how date rape drugs work, because if you know that, I probably don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
But thanks again for listening, everybody. And please check us out next week when there will be another wonderful book for you to think about and peruse if you're crazy. All right. Thanks, guys. Keep reading crap.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? When you were 8 and you had bad traits, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must